You could have a regulation in your state in a month from now that doesn't exist today, that's here in a month from now.
Yeah.
And knowing that they're passing and they're coming, and if you watch the trends, like if you learn about them, they're getting more aggressive and they're having more requirements, more disclosure, more. What does that mean? It means in time, it's just going to become more, not less, more. So you better be adapting your business.
It took me 18 years to be an overnight success and be able to adapt to any industry I'm in. And it just takes cutting out that fear and being a problem solver, which is a main theme in all these videos.
And guys, welcome back to another video in this series I'm doing with Tony Mont. Tony, thanks again for all you do. Thanks for being here and sharing so much. You're such a wealth of information. I've learned so much. I feel like I got a masterclass myself just hanging out with you. So thank you again for that.
Of course.
And guys, we have a playlist here with all these videos that we're doing on exit strategies. This one's going to be a little unique. It's the last one we're going to do during this time sitting down. If you're okay with it, I'd love to do more with time. And
of course.
Adding to this.
Yeah.
Because you and I are going to hang out more and do more cool stuff. So let's really think about doing that. But on this video, I kind of wanted to just take a minute. This is a topic that's been a lot on my mind. I've been doing a lot of content around it, especially as of late. But it's around the idea here of the future of wholesaling and specifically in regards to some regulations that are going on. And I'd love to have a conversation with you, maybe get your thoughts on this, your concerns, maybe what you're feeling about it, how you're adapting, what you plan on doing. And so if you guys aren't aware, by the way, in the wholesale industry, it used to be sort of like this obscure strategy that you know, not very many people knew about. Now it's a multi-billion-dollar a year industry. And so it's caught the eye of a lot of, you know, consumer protection agencies, regulators, the National Association of Realtors, the real estate commissions. Like everybody's very concerned about wholesaling. So what happens is it becomes a full-blown industry. Complaints start to come in. The regulators start to look at this. They try to make an example usually out of some people.
Right.
And then what usually happens is the overstep, right? Government comes in to regulate and protect the consumer. They overreach, they overregulate, and the few bad actors ruin it for everybody else. Like that's typically what happens.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of happens with any regulation.
Everything.
Right? They overregulate and then we kind of settle somewhere in the middle eventually, right?
Yeah, hopefully we settle somewhere.
Yeah. And you know, with the regulations and all that, it's kind of this hot topic right now. And I just did a reel about it, and you do a ton of videos about it that I listen to. And it seems like to me there is, you know, well, first of all, follow the money, right? Like, why are we having all these regulations? It's probably because realtors feel like that they are missing out on these commissions. But on the back side of things, they're getting sued for hundreds of millions of dollars for inflating commissions during COVID. So I kind of follow the greed and the money on why things happen. And I feel like that's a big part of it. There's a push for regulations, and I think it is, you know, brokers and realtors thinking that they're, you know, feeling like they're missing out on these deals that, you know, don't even qualify for lending most of the time and wouldn't get done if we didn't cold call them or reach out to these sellers, which us as wholesalers are willing to do. And if agents aren't willing to do it, we're willing to do it. And we're willing to, you know, get our hands dirty on these complicated real estate transactions and solving them. So we deserve our piece of the pie. But with the regulations that are coming, to me, it seems pretty simple to fix right now, though, right? Like I feel like strategies like the takedown method we talked about, you know, where you're really focused on raising capital as opposed to finding your buyer, because you're going to take the deal down and then now you're going to, you know, sell it to an end buyer. And things like double closing, where you're not assigning a contract, you're closing on the property and simultaneously closing with your buyer, so it cuts out the assignment contract and all that. There's you know, another way of, you know, getting around it with, you know, requirements of being an agent and a broker. Get your license, and
that solves it for a lot of states.
It solves it for a lot of states right now. You can get your license, team up with a broker, get your license, become a broker, to solve that problem. So I think there's like this big shock about the talk of all these regulations, but when you really boil it down, there's a few strategies we can do that kind of solves the problem with not a ton of panic, right?
Yeah, I think you're totally right there. Those are some immediate things that we can do to, solve some of these issues. The part that I struggle with, Tony, and tell me your thoughts on this, is overall, the problem I have with this overall is in the industry, in the real estate industry, the narrative about wholesalers and wholesaling is really, really derogatory. It's really negative. Most people you talk to that are not wholesalers, they think it's predatory. They think it's harmful to sellers. They think it's dishonest. They have all of these ideas around how it's bad. It's taking advantage of old ladies. Like we hear all these stories, and certainly that happens occasionally, right? Like there's a wholesaler that rips off the old lady, kicks her out of the house, all the things. Now it makes national news.
Sure.
And now they run with those stories, and now that's the whole industry, right? So you take a couple of bad examples, you make that mean the whole industry. So I really fundamentally struggle with just the perception we have. I mean, within our industry, we think we're the greatest thing ever.
Right.
And we think we solve problems and we do good and we build communities and we bring inventory to market that wouldn't otherwise, and all these things. And between you and I and you listening, we know that's true.
Sure.
But that's not the perception in the marketplace.
Yeah.
And it was interesting. I was talking to a member of the Real Estate Commission in South Carolina, so right next to you. And he said to me, I don't think wholesaling is salvageable. I don't think you guys can save your industry.
Wow.
And what he meant was the image.
Yeah.
We're too late to the game.
Yeah.
Like we're not going to change people's minds now about what wholesaling is.
Yeah, I would disagree with that. I mean, simply for the fact, if I look at other industries, and we use the example, I mean, the whole world uses the example of, is he a sleazy used car salesman? Yeah. I mean, there's this bad stigmatism. Or a lawyer. Yeah. Like there's bad stigmatisms to a lot of different industries that don't go away. Yeah. Timeshares, is a big one. There's still tons of timeshare companies. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry still. There is some regulations in that, but it's still kind of gunslinging out there in that industry. So
that's a good point.
Yeah, and I disagree a little bit that it's gonna, it's not salvageable, simply because, in me and you have talked about this before, where you have this idea of, a wholesale community where we kind of get together, not like a union, but more of a association or something, where we then have power to help change and influence the way, the industry looks at us, the industry of real estate looks at us. Yeah. And another thing I'll say is, if these small regulations come, just like we saw with the market shift and the interest rates went up and it got a little bit harder to wholesale, it cut a lot of the bad apples out of the industry. And I think if there is some slight regulation, it's gonna cut a lot of people out of the industry. And I think that is gonna organically probably fix a lot of the problems that people know about. And I mean, honestly, when people are really panicking about regulations and they hear about regulations, like all the DMs I get and all the questions I get about regulations, the first thing I ask is, how many deals are you doing a month? And the people that are panicking the most usually say, haven't done my first deal. I've gotten 2 deals under my belt. And then you have people like us, or people that do this full time, that do it ethically and know what we're doing and are okay with shifting with regulations. We're kind of like, hey, here's the ways we can solve this problem. And then when another regulation comes, we're going to solve that too and adapt.
That is so true. I mean, if you think about it, when a state passes a regulation that requires a license, right? Okay, so maybe there's workarounds, but just go get your license. So I have all these people that are like, oh, now I got to have a real estate license, I'm out. And I think to myself, if just that tiny bit of friction caused you to leave the industry, you never should have been here in the first place.
Good.
Like we need a little bit of friction to keep the integrity of what we're doing. If it's so easy to get into this business, then you're going to have all kinds of fly-by-nights, all kinds of crazy stuff going on, mudslingers and everything else.
Yeah.
You're going to attract dishonesty. You're going to attract the get-rich-quick crowd.
Yeah.
And it probably would do some good to our industry to have a little bit of friction.
Yes.
A little bit of barrier to entry.
Yes, I agree.
Now, does that become overreaching? Maybe, and that's a concern too. But like so far, most of this is like, guys, just raise the bar a bit.
Yeah. Go
do the extra thing. Learn how to double close. Learn how to do some of these other strategies, and you'll be fine.
Yeah, because that's what we know immediately can help solve the problem. So, like the reel I put out the other day, and this goes to show what a hot topic these regulations are. Because we teach double closing and transactional funding. I do personally, and the reels, 6 months ago, the videos I put out 6 months, a year ago, they'd get 3 or 5 people kind of signing up for transactional funding, and the one from last week, I think 120 people signed up for transactional funding because I explained, hey, if you guys are going to have to double close your deals because of these regulations, at least get set up with a transactional funder. So when you have a deal that you need to double close on, you already have that relationship with the lender, and you can get the lending to, for the transaction. So it shows you if 5 people were signing up for that a year ago, and now 120 people are creating accounts because they hear these regulations. I mean, that's how polarizing it is right now.
Yeah, I did the same thing. Like when the regulations first started coming out a couple years ago. I mean, the very first state was Illinois, and that was about 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Since then, now we've got a whole bunch more. I mean, just in March, there were 5 states that passed regulations. So it's coming, and it's probably going to come faster and faster. But I started a transactional funding company, and you can go to usejerryscash.com, and we'll do the first one for free just so you get your first one done. And then we have a pretty low rate to keep doing them. But it's like, what is the market throwing at me, and how do I solve problems? And this is just one more thing to solve. That's all.
Yeah, that's it.
And the people who are willing to solve it are the ones that are going to keep going, keep making money, and probably grab market share, because while everybody else cries and quits, you just step up your game.
Exactly. And, we see it all the time with, regulations and income tax and tax on corporations and everything the government tries to do and regulate. Fortunately for us, the smarter people are the business owners and entrepreneurs and investors, and we're going to find a way around everything.
Right now, they're talking about raising tax, the capital gains tax.
Yeah.
And do you think you and I are going to make less money?
No,
we're not going to make less money.
Yeah, we're just going to
figure it out.
Find a way legally around it.
We're going to figure it out.
Which is what people complain about. Corporations not paying their fair share and this and that. It's like, well, those rules were written by lawyers of the government, and then the lawyers that the entrepreneurs and the business owners used found the loopholes in those to not pay the taxes. So it's all, that's just how the world works. Usually the savvy investors and entrepreneurs are going to find ways around regulations.
Well, ultimately, it hurts the consumer.
It does, yeah.
When you raise taxes, it hurts the consumer because a business has to stay profitable. So they're going to pass those extra costs down to the customer. Just like when you raise minimum wage, that gets passed down to the consumer, not the business owner.
Yeah.
Same with these regulations. If you think about it, let's take South Carolina right now. South Carolina is the scariest state because if their law passes, which it looks like it will, they're basically going to shut down wholesaling like altogether. So not even do a double close, not do innovation. Basically transacting where you don't have legal title is what they're after.
Right.
So now what? Well, what that's going to mean is it's going to mean if wholesaling now is no longer a viable option, then the game is left up to highly capitalized investors. So now you and I, who are highly capitalized, are going to go into that market. And because we've just eliminated competition, we can buy a lot deeper.
Right.
And rightfully so. We have to factor in now cost of capital.
Right.
You just made it more expensive for us to transact.
Right.
A seller still wants to sell. So ultimately, who's getting hurt? The seller.
The seller.
The seller, because now he's going to have to sell for even cheaper because you can't do an assignment, which is the cheapest way out.
Right. Yeah. And if you think about it, the seller, if they had to use an agent and get the same, because we talked about putting these deals that are really only qualify for cash buyers on the MLS as a wholesaler to make our assignment fee. If if now all they can do is use agents, they're still going to have to pay agent commissions and closing costs and all that, which we handle, as wholesalers. So yeah, I agree 100%. It's going to get passed down.
It's like anything. The worst thing a regulation could do would be to take away competition, because competition is the way you keep prices fair and honest, and at the best prices.
Right.
Otherwise, you start to create where now only a few can play, and that's going to ultimately affect the seller. So you're hurting the very person that you're claiming to protect.
Right. That happens so much with regulations.
It's so normal.
It's so frustrating. You talked about the minimum wage. It's, out in California, the minimum wage is so high now that you walk into a McDonald's, you just talk to a kiosk. There's no more person.
When a couple years ago, I remember when Washington State, they raised their minimum wage to whatever it was, 14 or whatever. And literally McDonald's was on the sidelines watching. And I read an article, the next day they rolled in the machines and let go of all these people.
Yeah.
You lost jobs when you did that.
Yeah.
You did not protect jobs.
Right. Yeah. And that's the way the government sees things.
It was like McDonald's knew exactly like, hey, $1 more an hour and the machines are more effective than the people.
Yeah.
Pass it, machines come in, people lose jobs.
Well, and they do the same thing with self-checkout. They bake in, hey, we don't need as many employees and when they're raising the minimum wage. So we'll put these self-checkout, cashiers in there, and we already bake in the amount of stuff people steal with a self-checkout is peanuts compared to all the raise in all the minimum wages. So we see it right there. And the employees that they're trying to protect and make more money per hour are now getting laid off. And
I think with this regulation with wholesaling, like the big takeaways I try to tell people are, don't be fearful of it, learn about it, know about it, be aware of it, and you got to be thinking one step ahead now. You got to be thinking, okay, well, if all of a sudden they pass a regulation in my market and they can't, some of these regulations, like some of the March ones, went through the House, the Senate, and signed by the governor in a small window of time. Some of these like a month or two.
Right, which is crazy.
So like all of a sudden you could have a regulation in your state and then effective immediately. You could have a regulation in your state in a month from now that doesn't exist today, that's here in a month from now.
Yeah.
And knowing that they're passing and they're coming, and if you watch the trends, like if you learn about them, they're getting more aggressive on some of these regulations, like South Carolina, and they're having more requirements, more disclosure, more. What does that mean? It means in time, it's just going to become more, not less, more. So you better be adapting your business. You better be thinking about taking properties down, getting capital, double closes, other ways of transacting.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're going to be stuck with are you on the Titanic and hanging on? Right? Like, I don't want to be on the Titanic while it's sinking.
No, not at all. I want to jump in that boat first before the women and children. I'm saving myself.
But you'll be ahead of it.
Yeah, it's a progressive thing that we're seeing going on. It's progressive regulations, and the problem with progressive, it has the word progress in it. So they got to keep moving forward with these regulations. And I think what we can do now as wholesalers is get the transactional funding in place, right? If they have to double close, if assignments go away, we can, and then get lending in place, right? For our takedown strategies, if we can't, transact wholesale real estate anymore, and get your license. If you
have to get your license.
And get your license. That's what we can do right now.
I'd like to take a second and thank our sponsor for this video today, right here where I'm recording at the Looking Glass Hotel and Event Center. Located in the heart of San Juan, Puerto Rico, just 10 minutes from the airport and walking distance to the best restaurants, shopping, and beaches, this newly renovated hotel is the perfect spot for meetups, events, retreats, and podcasting. So if you want to create an unforgettable experience, come to the Looking Glass Hotel and Event Center. Click the link below this video in the description for more details. Right. It's interesting because when I look at like investors that are really successful, guys like you, what is it about you that makes you unique and special in the marketplace? And it's your ability to adapt quickly. Like you told the story on a previous video about the assignment on the MLS, and you told a story about how when the market shifted, rates went up, market shifted, you had 20 some contracts, buyers went away overnight, And what did you do? Did you just cancel all your contracts and go leave the industry? No, you quickly adjusted, and then you realized, hey, I could actually find my buyers on the MLS. That's where I'm going to get these buyers. I'm going to buckle down. I'm going to get this done. And in like you said, in like a couple days or whatever, a week, you had 16 of those deals moved.
Yeah, I think I moved 16 deals in 2 weeks for like 230, 40 grand.
What did you do? You adapted. You ran against an obstacle. The market shifted. It presented you these challenges, and you did not just roll over and throw in the towel. You adjusted quickly.
Yes. And that's something I learned in a previous business when I owned the bicycle company out in San Diego. We went through 2 cycles in 15 years when I owned that company of the bicycle business ups and downs. And we saw a lot of, retail shops go away, a lot of suppliers and wholesale and distribution companies go away. And we were able to adjust enough to where we survived the tough times, to where when the good times came back, just like we're talking about with real estate and wholesaling, when the good times came back and we were on the upswing again in that industry, all the fat got cut and we were the big dogs on campus and we were able to eat up the entire market share. So
that's the point.
That's the point. And it's a lot of people watching videos of me and you or anybody that, does this and is really successful at it. A lot of times they're like, well, this person, is an overnight success, or how did they do this? How did they do that? What luck was involved? It's, it took me 18 years to be an overnight success and be able to adapt to any industry I'm in. And it just takes, cutting out that fear and being a problem solver, which is a main theme in all these videos. And
embracing change. Like there's one thing that's certain, things are going to change.
Yeah.
That's the one certainty you can bank on. So guys, if you're like reluctant to change, in my businesses, I tell my team constantly, what we're doing today may not work tomorrow, and we're going to need to be able to change on the fly. I don't know what that is, but we're going to be trying to stay one step ahead of it. And if that's a problem, then this isn't a good organization, because we have to be nimble and quick to change, because that's what our business is. It's adapting to change, solving problems as they arise.
Right.
And that's all this means with regulation is it's like, these are going to be new problems that we're already used to solving problems, and we're just going to solve one more problem and keep going and building our businesses.
Yeah, I mean, I'm reading a book right now. It's called The Obstacle is the Way. And it's so true. We're not going to change kind of what happens to us. We're going to change the reaction is the only thing we can control in that, right?
Yeah.
And
so
look at this, look at this obstacle as a learning experience, and how do I get better?
Yeah. And that's the best of the best, are learn how to get really good at that. I just did a presentation at the Squat Up Summit Pace and Jamil's event, and my presentation was on how to increase your risk tolerance. And I kind of map out this progress. But what I said is, your income is in direct proportion to your level of risk tolerance.
Yes.
So if you want to make more money, increase your ability to manage and tolerate the anxiety of risk. That's how you do it. And that really resonated with a lot of people, because that's the key, is start where you're at and be able to build on that so that you can do bigger things.
Right.
Solve more problems, solve bigger problems, bring more value. That's how you increase your income.
Yeah.
Because the market's going to pay you in direct proportion to the value you bring or the problems you solve.
Yeah.
Want to make more money? Solve bigger problems.
Yeah. Anything good in life is not easy. I say that all the time. It's that, that hard work and that delayed gratification of adjusting, high risk, high reward. Like you see a NBA team win the championship. It was all this hard work and risk for this big reward. It's very few times, if at all, low risk, high reward. It's low risk, low reward. So taking that risk for that tolerance for risk, you're gonna win the biggest that way.
But guys, with this regulation, get educated on it. I have videos covering every single state that comes out with new regulation, because you need to know what it is. You need to be aware of it so that you can anticipate what's coming down the road. I have a free report. I call it, if you go to wholesaleregulations.com, you can download it, and it's state by state, all the different regulations, a breakdown of it, what it means, how it applies to you. And so stay one step ahead, make it your business to know what's going on. And that's how you're going to, beat the curve on this. So awesome. Thank you, Tony. I loved your insights on that. Guys, again, don't be fearful. Just be proactive about all this. And I'm going to put in the description the playlist link to all these videos. Also, I'm going to put in there some ways that you can follow Tony, his social accounts, and also he does some training on all these things we talked about with exit strategies throughout this series. He's got a community where you can be a member of that, and you can get on live calls and you can learn directly with Tony as he does this business. It's absolutely phenomenal. So check that out as well. And we just appreciate you guys. Leave a comment and let us know your big takeaways, what you're learning, what your questions are. And we'll see you on the next video.